Welcome back to Fireside and the What Are You Made Of show here with your boy C-Roc and on my YouTube channel, Mike C-Roc. We're live streaming. Welcome back. We have a special guest in the building, Christine Fonner, with us. What's up, Christine?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. What are you up to?
Oh man, I'm actually at the airport. I'm heading out to Dallas today.
Are you? Is it still good for the show?
It is, yes.
You know you're awesome because you got your setup in looks like in the car, which is awesome.
I do, yeah. Have Mike, will travel.
That is awesome. I've never traveled with the big mic like that. You know, I always had like a little one or my earbuds or something. No, this works, man. I might start a new show like from my car. Well, so you're heading to Dallas. I just got back from Dallas. I did a keynote there. Phenomenal time. And then I had I lost you. Let me see if I can bring her back. Let's see.
Can you hear me? That's so weird.
I can hear you, but your video is off. You might have to hit that little video button. There you go. You're back.
I did.
Yeah, so I was in Dallas and I did a few podcasts while I was there. Like killed a bunch of birds with one stone, and I love it there. And I got invited to come back again. So I'm not a Cowboys fan by any means. I'm an Eagles fan, but still a good time to go to Dallas.
The Eagles, man. I'm from Seattle, so I gotta go with the Hawks. But
that's okay. I respect that. I respect the 12th man. So, but listen, welcome to the show. This show is all about the ingredients that have gone into making my guests who they are. We understand the journey to success here. Not everybody understands this, but we understand that journey is often, and most of the time, invisible. People see where you are now, what you're doing now, but they don't see what you did to get there. And I love to expose that so the people that are starting their journeys or maybe starting over can be encouraged and inspired by that. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read your bio and introduce you, and then I'm going to ask you this question, which is the show's namesake: what are you made of? Okay. So folks, thanks for joining us today. Christine Fonner's in the building. She has over 20 years of leadership experience in both nonprofit and corporate sectors. She has contributed to the startup of 7 companies and has worked in over 30 organizations across 10 industries through her career. She's an executive leadership expert and coach and is the founder of Roam Your Soul, a women's leadership and adventure community. She's also a PhD candidate in organizational leadership, specializing in the human factor and the responsibility leaders have in creating radical care in the workplace, in the connection between personal, interpersonal needs and joy at work. She is just an awesome lady. Like, I love leadership people, because
we're a special breed.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, it's needed in this country. It's needed in our households. It's just such an important factor in not just surviving, but for mankind to thrive. And so I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'm very thankful to have you here, Christine. But before you say anything, I just have to ask you this question because I'll get down a rabbit hole if I don't. What are you made of?
I really thought about this question, and I kept coming back to grit, tenacity, and love.
Okay, so grit is a common one on this show, and I love it. And that means because most successful people that are coming in here, what it takes to be successful is grit, and also the love thing. So Christine, I want to know why you said those, but I got to tell you, ever since I decided to have unconditional love for people, no matter what they say, no matter what they do, I don't have to love what they do or say, but I genuinely love the soul of all people. It has changed my life and given me so much power and control over my life. That along with not taking anything personal, right? And so why did you say grit? Why did you say love? What brought you to?
Yeah. It's funny because I live in a mountain town at 9,318 feet up here in Colorado. And it's a gritty kind of life you have to love to be able to live up here. We've been harvesting wood for the last month. We're splitting it. I'm really good at building fire. You gotta have grit in a town like I chose to live in. And I chose to live in that town because it encompasses what this really means to me. Like, when you're able to do the work and know that nobody is better than the work being done, that's grit to me. That you recognize that it takes getting your hands dirty, caring about the work you're doing and caring about the quality of work that you're doing to actually accomplish what you want to accomplish. And for me, I started early on in my career saying I really want to create spaces where people want to come to work. We spend so much time there, and there's so many people that don't know how to create those spaces, and we live in these miserable worlds. Toxic leadership is real, and most of the time it's because somebody's in over their head. So, when I think about grit and I think about love and I think about tenacity, all of this kind of circles back to I want to be surrounded by people who want to live with joy, love, and care. And in order to do that, you kind of have to be gritty and tenacious, because there's a lot of toxic BS you got to wave through and waft through to create those spaces.
Yeah. By the way, I keep hitting mute on purpose. This show is so laid back. By the way,
I love it.
this is not like a news broadcast channel. This is laid back. So I'm glad that you feel laid back, because I can tell you're just chill. But I have this bug here that's been hanging out with me for my past few shows. It's like a locust or zucata or something.
Oh, the
And so I want to
cicadas,
go on mute
yeah.
when you're talking, because I don't want to miss what you're saying. I was looking at a picture of your podcast. I believe it's your podcast, maybe.
Hmm.
And it was badass. And I just wanted to tell you that. I'm going to pull up here and I'm going to show everybody. Let me see, which one
There's
was it?
some
Do you
pretty
still use?
badass women that have been on that podcast.
Yeah, the Executive Lounge, High Powered Women in Leadership. Yeah,
Yeah,
look at
that's
that.
a podcast.
That's a badass picture, man. Look at you.
Loving
So,
it.
I've done photo shoots before, content shoots, and all that, and just never know, like, what other people think of it. And then I don't know if you think that that's badass, because sometimes I might like a picture of somebody and they're like, I don't really like that one. So,
Yeah.
vice versa. But I just wanted to,
But I
let you
think
know.
too, you mentioned that, we like leadership is about like what are we doing at home, what are we doing at work, how are we impacting the world around us, and part of my goal is to redefine what leadership is to people. It's so amazing to me to have people on that show, high level executive women, question what is leadership and am I a leader? It's everybody's a leader. We make an average of 2,700 decisions a day as human beings. Like, everyone is a leader. And so I think that's a piece of it, is like, yeah, like leadership is about stepping into your power. It's about stepping into your capability. And it's about really understanding like we have impact. And I think it's so interesting how many people, like how people define leadership, right? Like, I spent my whole career in this space. What is leadership and how do we do it? And it's so fascinating on this podcast to hear perspective on that.
Yeah. Well, are you surprised, as well as all the people that you've interviewed and run into and have worked with, how insecure successful people actually are?
Isn't that funny? Yeah, we all have imposter syndrome. We all are in over our heads sometimes. I think the difference between a high level performing person that is really effective and caring and a high level performing person that's effective and toxic is self-reflection, is the ability to say, I think I got some things I got to learn, or hey, I need to surround myself with some different people. That's to me the difference. It's a fine line if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, I gotta move a little bit. So, because of this guy over here, who weed whacks while I have my show? Who weed
I
whacks
know
while I
it's
have my?
always the lawn. It's always the lawn guys that come in right when you need it to be
Yeah,
quiet.
that's okay. We're
I
gonna
had somebody
continue, but
working on my house the other day, and they were doing a saw. It's very loud.
oh really? A chainsaw?
What are you
Well,
gonna do?
what about leadership and people holding people accountable and having struggles with that? One of my core values is leadership starts with me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What that
Yeah.
means is, do you work with people on that part, like to start, like they're having trouble leading an organization, and say, well, how are you leading yourself?
Mhm. I mean, I literally just got off the phone with a client right before this call about accountability and how do you build accountability with care. I think, it's interesting because I think a lot of the conversations I have go one way or the other. It's either I'm afraid that I'm going to care so much that I look weak and my team doesn't respect me, or I I'm going to really reinforce the accountability measures, and now I'm just a bitch, or now I'm just, excuse my language, now I'm just like a cold-hearted, mean boss, right? And there's
Right.
this oscillating that tends to happen in the early years of your leadership. And you know when you say leadership starts with me, absolutely. Like how do I come to the table with accountability? Well, it's about balance. I care about my family, I care about my personal life, but I also care about the performance of my organization and the success of my organization. So how do I balance that? And I think that's what we have to teach and model and share with employees is it's not that you don't care. It's that you're having a really hard time balancing. Maybe it is that you don't care, but I'll coach you in or coach you out. That's totally your choice. But it does, it's accountability starts with the balance of caring about somebody personally and professionally together.
Yeah, yeah, I love that, man. Where did I start that? I was in a company and I found that my partners weren't holding their teams accountable. And I take responsibility for that because even though we were partners, I just always have felt like I was the alpha leader because I was willing to do whatever it takes. Not everybody's like that, right? I'm like willing to run through that brick wall to get the job done, to get the mission done. And I took responsibility for that. But what I noticed is I would hold them accountable, but they weren't holding themselves accountable, so they could not find themselves able to hold other people accountable because
Yeah.
then they would just feel like imposters or not
Well,
genuine. So
it's also about clarity. Like, if you have no clarity on what it is that you're trying to accomplish or how to do it, it's really hard to hold accountabilities.
yeah, 100%. Well, I want to find out how we got into leadership in the first place. So where did it all start from you? Like, as far as you can take us back as far as you want, but like as a kid, were you always a
Bossy,
leader, so to
totally.
speak?
Always bossy. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
Um,
I was. I was. I'll be honest. But is that where it started for you when you were younger or teenage or?
Yeah, I think I always stepped into different kinds of leadership roles differently. As a younger person, it was a lot more about efficiencies and effectiveness, right? Like I'm capable, so I'm going to get it done. And so that would promote me into positions that, pretty quickly that had more responsibility and had more leadership opportunities. I think when the leadership practice piece, and there's a difference between doing a really good job and getting promoted because you do a really good job and being a leader. The leadership piece, when people started getting involved, is when I had my first team at the age of 19, and I realized my effectiveness and my efficiencies and my systems and my processes, my operations background, my strategy is only as good as the people, and the people are only as good as my ability to work with them and help bring them along. So, what do I need to do to be better at that? And I was lucky. I had a really good mentor at the age of 19. I had a mentor that believed in me, that taught me a lot of foundational aspects of being an adult and how to be accountable myself and how to own my mistakes without, going into the depths of despair, but learn from them and grow from them and try again. I had that opportunity. And then, I moved into other organizations that weren't as good. And then I think a lot of leaders too, they'll build their practice off of like, well, I'm not doing that when I'm a leader, right? Like you build it off of what you see and you don't want. And so I started oscillating between the two. And then I just really wanted to, I'm a voracious learner. I wanted to learn how to be an expert in how to do this. And so that's where I went into my master's, and then I went into my PhD, and I went into businesses, and I started working across 30 organizations because I wanted to be an expert in leadership. I didn't want to have a niche in sales or, education or whatever it was, because leadership, like good leadership is good leadership is good leadership. And it's about behavior. And so if I can build people's understandings about behavior and relationships and how we make decisions, that cognitive space, that's the jam. And that's where joy comes in. So, anyway, that's a long story to say. I mean, it started early, but I was lucky that I had a good mentor, and I was super curious and self reflective. I wasn't afraid to say I was bad at something.
What made that mentor so good? Like, what was the great thing about them?
Shout out to Marshall Johnson. The best part was he let me make mistakes, and then he was there to help me pick up the pieces and try again. And he didn't do it for me, but he let me struggle, like really struggle. I remember I was in a board meeting one time, and he said afterwards, he's like, "You looked like a deer in the headlights. Like you can't do that." And then he was like, "And then you just stumbled, and here's where that went wrong. Why do you think it went wrong?" Right? He made me really sit in it. And then he made me go and run the board meeting the next month. He didn't make me, he gave me the opportunity to say, all right, well, you've learned from these situations. You weren't as effective or impactful as you could have been because you were scared. So, how do you build in strategy and skill to not be scared, but walk in and command a room as an expert and share the information you need to share to be influential? And I mean, as a 19-year-old, that's a lot. But I was given that opportunity over and over and over again.
So that seems like a catalytic moment right there, right? That were. Do you have any other juicy stories like that were catalytic moments that were really challenging at the time, where you thought, "Holy shit, this is the end," or "I can't believe I did that," or "What am I going to do now?" Like, do you have any of those moments?
Oh, like 1,000, but I'll give you a really good one. I went in as an interim administrator for a school that was really on the docket to close because of non-compliance. And I was rapid fire trying to make changes because they were non-compliant, which means they were going to lose their funding and close the doors. Not only that, they were so non-compliant, the state was like, "We're about to close you." And so I was hired in to be the fixer. And about 4 months in, there was a full-on coup d'etat. Like, there were certain employees that full-on turned the board, turned other employees, turned community, and it was a full-on coup d'etat. And it was one of the hardest experiences I ever went through. It was emotionally traumatic. It was devastating. And we had 9 board members when I started, and then there were, I think, 5, and they were fully different people, right? Like full on coup d'etat. And if you don't know what a coup d'etat means, it means like Trojan horse style. People come in and just take over, and they strategize it, they plan it, they want to overthrow you. And it became really about, for me, I had to make a choice. Do I emotionally break down and say you win? Or do I hold true to what I was tasked to do, which was keep this beautiful school for these beautiful families open and get them compliant to be able to have the funding to do so? And I did the latter. It took me like 2 years to recover from that, but I did the latter, and the school is still open today.
Yeah, we just there was an incident recently at a school. It was a post high school prep school for football players to get them prepared for college, maybe grades or what have you. And there was a viral video that just went out, and it was the coach, who happened to be a white guy, yelling at a black player in his face. The kid was 19, and yelling at him, and like bad, right? And it went viral because one of the kids was filming it down here like this. And this gentleman was the founder of the school, the coach of the football team. He couldn't fire himself. He could step aside, but he couldn't fire himself. And he's the one that was funding everything. So that what you just talked about reminded me of this, because there was kind of like a coup d'etat that was going on there as well, especially because the video was viral and there was so much outside influence coming in, and PR like nightmare and harassment and what have you. And we actually were, I don't know if you're familiar with the app Clubhouse.
Yeah.
Okay, so we were at a Clubhouse room about this video, and we sent the famous Tommy Jackson, who was an Alabama high school football coach, very successful businessman. We sent him down, and he went into he talked to the coach, and he went down into this into the school, into the lion's den, so to speak, and then had the same kind of challenges that you just faced there. It just reminded me of that, and that just happened like 2 weeks ago. So
Yeah, and
and
I mean, the recovery is hard, right? Like, how do you build repair? How do you build community backup? How do you build trust? And can you do it with that person still a part of the community? It's tough.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I mean, don't get me wrong, that was really traumatic and it was really hard, and it did take me a few years to recover from that one, but I'm really proud of the work, right? I'm so proud that we were able to do what we did in a way that created goodness and created some impact, and allowed this community to come together and heal and grow and still be in existence.
that's awesome, man. It's one thing to get paid to do something, but it's also the impact that.
You talked about this, and I talk about this a lot in my work. In the beginning of the show, we talked about survive versus thrive, right? That that my a lot of my life I spent in survival, and I grew up with like all the aces of poverty and drugs and all these things in my life. And like I was always in survive mode. I've worked at 7 startups. That's a lot of survival, right? Like, how do I get to the next payroll? How do I get the next funder? How do I get this stuff imported? I've never worked in importing before, right? Like, there's all these like unknowns of surviving and just trying to make it happen. So, I feel like I hit a point in my career maybe 7 or 8 years ago where I hit Thrive. And maybe that's a personal thing too, right? Like, I started hitting Thrive as a human being. And, I think work can be very inconsistent, especially when you work for yourself. It can be very inconsistent. Some days you might get $0 and then you might get the big contract, right? So for me, super inconsistent, I'll be honest. Like, but you learn how to thrive in that. And I thrive in adrenaline space. Like, I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love adventure. I love going into the burning buildings and helping you put it out, right? I think for me, a lot of now is referrals. Like, when people see the work I do and they see the impacts, then I get a referral. And those, I think, are the most rewarding, because then you know that the work you're doing is meaningful, it's purposeful, that people really see that it's helping them. And so that's what I'm hunting. I'm hunting, like, where are the people that get it? Where are the people that see the impacts? And I want to come in and like cheerlead it out. Like, that's what I'm looking for now.
And how did you switch to that thriving? Like, what was the moment for that, or the cause of that?
Yeah, I think, like, I always say, like, when you hit your 40s, your last flying F just goes out the door.
Well,
That was
you're
probably
you're not 40. Are you serious?
Oh my gosh, my birthday's next month. I'll be 40. I have a nice warm house. The survival stuff is no longer necessary. I've made it out, right? Like, I recognize that, because I know not making it out is so hard. And recognizing that I'm in Thrive now allows me to say, well, where's my impact and influence then? I'm not in survival mode. I don't need help in that way anymore. How can I go help? And that's what I hope everybody can strive towards, and that I can help impact, is I want everybody moving out of survive and into thrive, right? Like, that's where we all can change the world together. Is like, if you're in survival mode, you're just trying to eat, right? And it's really hard to be impactful and find joy in that. And everybody deserves to have the joy of impact.
Agreed, agreed, agreed. Well, let me ask you this. So there's a lot of people that have done leadership content, John Maxwell, like many, right? Um, Number one, did you ever find yourself when you were doing your podcast, your coaching, regurgitating information that you learned from mentors, or John Maxwell or whoever, books you read, and then find yourself like, eventually I got to come up with my own, nothing new, but it's just like the way you frame it, right? Like Christine Fonner's IP.
Yeah.
Like, did
I
you ever
call
go
those
through that
Christinisms.
transition, that phase, and you're like, I got to come up with my own stuff, and it took time, and
Yeah, I call those Christinisms. And people repeat them to me sometimes. Like, oh, Christine, like, you were in my head the other day. It was this that you said. And so I think over the years, I've gotten those, and I have those, and I have frameworks and curriculums that are mine. But I can't say that those are mine wholly, because we all are learning from others that came before us. And there are specific. And I always ask this question about, like, what are the foundational, life changing, transformative resources you found at certain points in your career? For me, it was about coaching. When I started incorporating coaching into my leadership, it completely shifted how I led. And so there's two that come to mind for me, which is Elena Aguilar. She does the art of coaching of places, and then realizing that something that I've said, or a framework that I built, is super effective at this point, because I've incorporated 23 years of leadership experience into what I'm now sharing with other people. And I'll give credit where credit's due. Sometimes it's a Christinism, and sometimes it's someone else really, really awesome.
now, Christine, what do you, and at the end of the day, like your vision for what you want, like what do you see Christine Vonner becoming more than you are now? But like, what would light you up to see you became this, whatever that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it's the community impact, and that's kind of where I've been shifting lately. Is, executive leadership coaching is super fun. Working with individuals and orgs is cool, but I want to work with leaders that recognize that leadership is truly about impacting and influencing for the greater good. And how can I do that at like with a community mindset? So community in your organization, community in your neighborhood, community as part of a human being of this world. So I've been really having a lot of fun finding new spaces to build community and help community get built by people who are passionate about that. I was talking to somebody yesterday about he wants to start a pond hockey tournament in the area. And we were, how do I help you make that happen? I'm in. Like that's the kind of stuff that actually shifts paradigms and shifts people into really having deep, meaningful connections together where impact and influence is totally possible. So for Christine in the future, how do I come in and help communities thrive? How do I come in and help communities have each person in that community feel deep, meaningful connection to each other? That's where I'm going.
And then how about the ego part? Because like, that kind of thing.
Oh man, that's the aspiration. Absolutely. I think, my PhD work is going to result in a book, which I'm super excited about. I have probably 3 books in me. I always say everybody has at least 1 book in them. I'm going to try for 3 because I'm an overachiever
I thought
perfectionist.
you said 30.
Yes, I absolutely hope.
I thought you said 30 at first. 30.
I mean, maybe, who knows,
Yeah,
right?
that's awesome.
Like I might get the first one done and be like, boom.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to shout you down. I was going to say, let's go when we start.
Right? Well, it's always like the first one, right? You got to get a gaggle, and then it doesn't feel like a bad idea. I do hope that. I mean, I love speaking to the masses. I love sharing ideas, and I love the idea that what I've learned is important and what I've learned is useful, and how can I share that with others? So, yeah, bring it on. TED Talk, book publishing, like who knows?
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, I'm rooting for you, and I'll support you, and I'll push as far as you want to go because that's the way I roll with my friends. So I love it. So final questions as we wind down here because you're getting ready to fly and all that, and I want to wrap this up on time. 2 parts. What has podcasting done for you? 1, your show, right? And then going on other shows, do you do it consistently? And what has it done for you? And what's the power that you see in podcasting? Because I ask, because I've been on over 900 shows, okay, in the last 3.5 years. I understand what I believe in it. And I created That One brand to go on our That One agency to get entrepreneurs and speakers and coaches to understand the efficiency and effectiveness. And coaches, I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I always say that leadership really starts with storytelling and that we all have these stories to tell. And the more you know your story and the more you can share it, the more you step into that validation of your story, right? And the more you can narrate it. Your story matters and that others feel deep, meaningful connection when we share story. And that change comes in our voices. Change comes in sharing story. The flip of that for me being on podcasts is, am I owning my own narrative, right? Like, am I able to even talk about myself? And then realizing, hey, I have a story too, and it's pretty good. And then realizing that, the energy that you get to bring to the table to talk about cool stuff that you really, really care about, in a way that's like fun and conversational. I mean, we're I'm sitting in an airport in rural Colorado talking to you. How amazing that I get to make this connection through a podcast. So I think on a personal level, it's helped me realize that those connections are so important for me too.
I love it. I love it. That's sick. So the other thing is like thinking about what you can do with it and the content and repurposing it and becoming omnipresent for what you just talked about for your future and becoming that influencer. For people that are watching this right now, guys, we need to think about how can we become omnipresent? Not to 8 billion people on the planet. That doesn't matter. It's the people that matter to what we're trying to accomplish, the ideal ears that we're trying to reach. You can become omnipresent through not just the podcast itself, but repurposing of that and then making sure that people see the little clips constantly. I have been known to not let people get away from me, Christine. Like they say, man, every time I turn on my social media, like you're there. But that's the key. And they can always unfollow me if they don't want to. And those people, those aren't the ears I'm trying to reach. Unfollow me if they don't want to. Glad, thank you for being here today and answering all the questions that I threw at you. And being there while you were traveling, it just means the world to me that you took the time to bring your big mic with you and your headphones. Because some people would just reschedule. And I appreciate that. It means on your favorite podcast platform. Make sure you subscribe. If you're on the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe and like and comment. We appreciate you being here. It means the world for your support, and I'm going to keep bringing great guests just like Christine to you here on the What Are You Made Of show. It's your boy C-Roc. Until next time, safe travels to Christine, and all of you be